afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Business, Finance, and Justice Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, June the 8th, 2023, and I call this meeting to order at 3 p.m. Invocation, Representative Mark Randolph.
Lord, we're thankful for another day, for all the blessings that you've given us, Lord, and ask that you just guide and direct us as we conduct the business of the nation, Lord. Shine a light on our path and show us the way, Lord. Clear our minds, touch our hearts in goodness. And thank you for your love, your protection, your mercy. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Representative Randolph. Roll call, Legislative Clerk April Lindsay.
Patrick Freeman. Sandra Golden.
Present.
Randall Hicks.
Present.
Thomasine Yohola Osborne.
Present.
Mark Randolph.
Present.
Madam Chair, you got 5 present and 0 absent.
We have 5 present and 0 absent. This constitutes a quorum. All business conducted will be valid. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from May the 11th, 2023. And when the committee is ready, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion to approve the minutes with any changes as necessary.
We have a motion from Representative Hicks to approve the minutes with any changes necessary. We have a second from Representative Randolph. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Sandra Golden.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. The minutes of May the 11th, 2023 are approved. Next item on the agenda is order of business. NCA 23-036, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation amending NCA Title 14, Subchapter 3, Subsection 1-309, entitled Extradition of Defendants Subject to Other Jurisdiction. Sponsor is Representative Randall Hicks. And this was postponed from May the 11th, 2023.
Motion do pass.
We have a motion for due pass. The substitute?
Substitute, sorry.
Thank you, Representative Hicks. Second. Representative Randolph. Discussion? Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, as you had mentioned, this was postponed on 5/11/23. Since then, well, there was some discussion that needed to be done between some offices or departments. And since then, I know the AG's office, Chief's Attorney, and our attorney all had a meeting to discuss the legislation. So at this time, if the committee will allow Mr. Dellinger from the Attorney General's office to discuss the legislation.
Thank you,
Or
Representative
District
Hicks.
Court, I'm sorry.
Okay. Mr. Dellinger, go ahead.
Madam Chair and committee members, and thank you for taking this under consideration further. As Representative Hicks stated, after the last meeting, there were some issues that had been raised, and so the appropriate offices got together, the AG's office, Chief's Attorney, Counsel for the National Council, and our office got together on 2 occasions and discussed the matter quite extensively. And the substitute bill is a reflection of our discussions and some of the additions that needed to be made to the legislation. And at this point, we're all in agreement that this is a much better bill than it was when it was presented back in May, and we're all satisfied with it. And I can go over just quickly, if you'd like, some of the changes we made. We have allowed for 2 types of extradition procedures to take place when another jurisdiction is requesting us to extradite somebody we have detained. There's a formal request, which is when another jurisdiction knows somebody may be living within the reservation boundaries, so they send a formal request saying, hey, if you ever detain this person, contact us, because there's a good chance or a possibility that we want you to hold them until we can come and get them. That's considered a formal request. And then there's an informal request, which takes place probably more often than the formal request, and that's if somebody's pulled over out here on Highway 75 because they're speeding, Light Horse pulls them over, they do a check and realize there's a warrant out for their arrest in another jurisdiction. They contact that jurisdiction and ask, do you want us to detain them for up to 3 days so you can come and get them? And then if they respond yes, then we do hold them until they come and get them. So there's a formal request procedure and an informal request procedure, so we've added that. And then we've also added the requirement that if a person is going to waive their extradition and allowed, agree to be extradited to another jurisdiction, they'll fill out a form. So we'll have a documentation, a written documentation to prove and to show that they understood their rights and they understand what they're waiving and that they are being extradited. And then the third big thing I think that we've added is a protocol when there is a formal request. If a jurisdiction wants to request extradition from somebody that may show up or within our jurisdiction, they will send that request to the chief's office, and then the chief's office can request the AG's assistance to determine the validity of the request, making sure the warrant's good, or just that there's a valid need, a valid cause to extradite the person. And upon that determination, then the AG's office would contact the law enforcement and let them know, we'll hold them, and yes, you can come and get them. So we've also limited the number of days that we will initially hold someone to 3 days, and we've also limited the number of days a person can ask for an extension from, I think it was originally 15 days to 5 days. One of the reasons we did that is just cost, that those are things that if we're holding them, we might have to be responsible for. But the other thing we've added in here too, when another jurisdiction requests us to hold somebody, they will pay that facility. If it's Okmulgee County, they will have to pay them directly. We kind of get out of it, so we don't have to try to collect. So those are the changes we've made, and I think one of the goals that we had mentioned last time was that we all kind of agreed with extradition, but we wanted to have a good law and a law that we all could come together before you all and say we all support and agree with, and so we're there now. So it was good that we appreciate you allowing us the time to reconsider this and put some final tweaks on it, but it's in a position now where we're all satisfied with it.
Thank you, Mr. Dellinger. Are there any questions from the committee for Mr. Dellinger? Any questions from the representatives in attendance or online for Mr. Dellinger? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman.
Yes.
Sandra Golden.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. NCA 23-036 passes. Thank you, Mr. Dellinger. NCA 23-038, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation to amend Article 6, Section 2, and subsection A of the Constitution of the Muskogee Creek Nation by deleting both at-large voting and at-large representative and replacing it with eligible registered district voting, resident and absentee, and district representation pertaining to the Muskogee Creek Nation National Council. Sponsor, Speaker William Lowe. A motion for due pass from Representative Pat Freeman. We have a second from Representative Mark Randolph. Discussion? Substitute, Representative?
Oh, substitute.
Okay. Okay, making a motion to pass the substitute for NCA 23-038.
I have a question.
Representative Randolph, go ahead.
I guess this is for you, Speaker. I had a call yesterday, and they were wanting to know, from what I understand, it's just at-large, going back to district voting from at-large voting. They were thinking that it was making it where the at-large citizens could not vote. And I was assuring them, from what I read, that it did not just wanted to say that here, so if anyone else hears that or assumes that. Is that correct?
Can you hear me? Yes, sir. That's correct, because the at-large voters will have to declare a district when they will be able to vote. So I got that same kinds of questions even last month when it was postponed. So yeah, the misunderstanding is that the at-large voters would not get to vote, but technically they will have to claim a district to be able to vote.
Very good, thank you. I'd also, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
There's some ladies, I know Ms. Rita Williams, I think she had some input on this bill. We could let her speak.
Representative Randolph is going to give some time to Ms. Williams.
Thank you, National Council of Representatives. I am currently the chairperson of the Muskogee Lady Legends, and we had requested Speaker Lowe at one of our meetings to come and address our committee along with Representative Randolph, because we had some concerns about the voting in districts and going back to the way that we originally had with district voting. And most of the citizens that we have visited with are echoing the same sentiments. We don't know the other candidates that are running in the other districts. And some of them are saying, so I'm not even voting in those because of that one reason. So we just visited with the representatives and seeing that if this was a concern, because it certainly was a concern of our people. And I appreciate any piece of input that you council representatives had in this. And so basically, I'm just here on behalf of this legislation, and would love to have your support in this on behalf of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Representative Golden, do you have a question?
Yeah, you said that there's a concern about the voting for everybody.
Well, that concern was from the citizens that we heard in different districts, and I think that has always kind of been the issue since it had turned to at-large voting, because they didn't understand the candidates in different districts, and so they really felt like that we needed to go back to our district voting for the people that we know, and that only shows, some accountability, at least to the citizens in that district.
Okay, one of the questions that I had was, okay, if those people are the only ones that vote for those people in that community, then they only represent those people in that district. They don't represent anybody else, even at large, because it is separate.
So, so you're saying that when we vote, that we're voting separate?
When you vote, you're voting for a representative from your district. And when that person, all the people in that district only vote for that representative, correct? So even though they're at large, they can still vote, but they don't really have any representation because they're at large, and there's an at-large office. So they're saying they really don't have representation.
I would kind of agree a little bit, on that. But bottom line, at the end of the day, we would love to see this amendment, the constitutional amendment, going back to district voting.
Yeah, I understand that. Also, I know before this amendment was originally made that there's only 16 people and they represent everybody, that it was based on population. And so population was real small in some of the districts and very large in other districts. Mm-hmm. Like Tulsa had 5 or 6 people, Okmulgee had,
right.
Yeah, and
right.
Okfuskee district had 3. And so that was a problem because in that area, especially Okfuskee district, everybody voted for Okmulgee or Tulsa. So Okfuskee got outvoted on the council.
Right.
And so there was this thing about, again, representation. And I'm not against this. I just want to make sure that I understand it.
Right.
And that as a representative, I'm not just representing Okfuskee district, all of the citizens. At that time also, when I was talking to, trying to understand this, I was told that if they don't declare a district, when they put in their voting, they just automatically put them in Okmulgee. And that's how the numbers got so big. So how are they going to figure out these people that got put in Okmulgee District? It's going to take them longer to figure out where they're supposed to be.
I did not write this legislation.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
so
I understand your point, and I think that would be something that they would have to work out internally,
yeah.
you know.
Okay. And probably whenever this gets voted on, if it's, you know, this session, then when will it take effect?
Right.
And the election board, the last time I went to their meeting, they were saying, if this gets passed and it's coming up for this year, there's no way we can do the turnaround. So maybe consider that we get more information and put it on for the next election, the next session that we do election, rather than this time.
That would probably be something as the sponsor of this legislation would have to consider, and also along with the co-sponsor. And
And I just brought that up because I'd like to know how many, what the number is that it would affect, you know, so we can be fair to everybody.
well, we leave that up to our representatives to, you know, to sort that out.
Figure that out.
Okay, Representative Golden, we actually have Ms. Barnett from the Election Board online in case there's any questions that you might have for her regarding, because as Ms. Williams stated, that's more, some of those questions that you've addressed are more internal than what Ms. Williams can answer for you, or possibly even the sponsor of the legislation. So, Ms. Barnett, would you like to add anything?
Sure. Thank you. Oops. Thank you for the time to speak today. We have discussed this as an election board, and there are some other logistical things and even financial considerations to consider if this would pass. Right now, it is correct that if you register as an absentee voter, and that you could live within the district, within the reservation and register as absentee, or outside the reservation and register as absentee, as you all know. If you do not declare a district on your form, it states clearly on the form that it will default to the Okmulgee district, as Representative Golden mentioned. However, you do have the option to select a district if you fill out the form in its entirety. I think one of the primary concerns, yes, we would have to print multiple ballots, because if you're only voting for your district, then we would have to have 8 separate ballots for every election. That's not of primary concern. That is relatively easy to handle. However, the machines that we use to count those ballots, they're not all capable of, let's say, reading multiple versions of ballots. The equipment that we currently have for the voting locations, it can only scan and read one ballot accurately. And we want to make sure that that those votes are tallied accurately, right? So we would have to purchase additional machines for each voting district. We think we may be able to program the absentee ballot voting machine to read multiple ballots, but that's something that we'd have to consult with our the company that we have purchased the equipment, and we received technical assistance and training through to fully understand what the implications would be. But it would be, there would be a significant amount of funding needed to make sure that we have the proper equipment, since we now run our own elections as an exhibit of our sovereignty. And so we're not contracting with other companies. We have all of our own equipment that we use and that we're trained on, and we train our election workers to use as well. So there is some concern about the logistics of that. And I think the last thing that I'll say is that the current code states that we are not allowed to deny any registered voter the right to vote. So if I live in Okmulgee district and I go to a Fuskee district and try to vote, if I'm a registered voter, according to the code, I can't be turned away. which means that we need the ability to process, the way we understand it, we need the ability for that individual to both complete a ballot and that ballot to be processed at every voting location. And so that is something that we also need to be sure that is addressed if this legislation moves forward.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. Representative Randolph?
In section 6, it says, as provided in the Muskogee Creek Nation Constitution, if the above question is ratified by 2/3 of the voters in the election, the amendment shall have full force and be effective after the 2023 general election has concluded. So it doesn't apply to this election. Am I correct on that, sponsor?
Thank you, Representative Randolph. Are there any other questions? Representative Hicks?
Madam Chair, if nobody has any questions for Ms. Williams, Mr. Joe Williams had some
Sure.
requested
Mr.
some time.
Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good afternoon. So when Chief Hill got a copy of this substitute, he sent it to me for review, and I wanted to bring up some concerns, one of which is kind of relatively minor. The language in section 6 about after the 2023 general election, it conflicts with the date in section 4 where it says after the 2024 general election has been concluded. So that, I think that's just a typo, can be fixed. The bigger concern, though, is removal of the language providing for seat A's and seat B representatives. Because right now, the language of the Constitution says how we establish seat A's and seat B's, and they're staggered terms. But with this proposed amendment, it strikes out all that language and just says seats A and B. So to me, the Constitution needs to be clear about the process that we have in place for determining who's A and B. So I haven't talked with the sponsor, but maybe a fix would be to keep in the language that's currently in the Constitution about how we get seats A and B, because it would still work. Even though we change it from at-large to district voting, it could still work with the current language we have. So but I just wanted to point that out to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Are there any questions for Mr. Williams? Representative Golden? No, microphone.
It sounds like we really need to clarify that before we approve this part of it anyway.
I mean, yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Any other questions? Representative Hicks?
I have a question, but not for Representative Williams.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead and ask my question. It's not for Mr. Williams.
Right, go ahead.
Okay. My question is, and I don't know who can answer it, but my question is, why was this changed in the first place? Why did it go from district voting to everybody voting? Because at one point it was district voting only, correct? So my question is, why did it go from point A to point B? And now why are we wanting to go back to point A? Whoever can answer that.
I don't know if I can answer it or not.
Just,
but
Mr. Golden. Sponsor?
From my understanding, it went from district voting to at-large in was the 2009 Constitutional Convention, 2008. That's, from what I know, is why it went from district to at-large voting. But the reason I am sponsoring this is, as speaker, I get constant calls daily from our citizens, regardless of where they live, asking if I can present this bill to the council and let the council decide if we can go back to district voting. So for me, listening to our people and being the voice of our people, just like all of us are, that's why I sponsored this bill. So from my understanding, it went from our district to at-large in 08 during that constitutional convention, sir.
Right. I mean, I understand that, and thank you for that, but why?
Representative Randolph?
I visited with quite a few folks in two different meetings, and even Edwin Marshall had called me one day and was telling me, as part of the Constitutional Convention, this is what they expressed to me, that there was a vote on changing it from 26 council people down to 16, and somehow or another, the district voting got included in there, but it wasn't really voted on. And I think for 29 years, we did district voting, and for the last 10, we've done at-large. That's my understanding from how the roots of it. I mean, I wasn't there, I don't know, but that's what was conveyed to me.
Representative Golden?
That part of it, I sat on the original committee that discussed it when they were wanting to change it. And the reason that the citizens were wanting to change it was because of the number of people in the representatives. Because there were, like I said, South, everybody was outvoted. So they said if we had equal number of people that represented everybody, so from there, and then I was off the council, then like Mr. Randolph said, somebody changed it from what it was supposed to be. So the A and B seats, I don't know how that came about. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Golden.
Chairman,
Are there any other questions from the
Chairman.
committee? Are there any other questions from the
Chairman.
committee? I can hear you, hold on. Are there any other questions from the committee? Okay, Representative Harjo?
Yes, I want to make a statement. I can understand equal representation, but that would have been an easy fix, because then you could have just went down to 2 representatives for each district, and that would have been fair across the board. That was an easy fix. What I was told from one of the former chiefs, he pulled me into his office when I sat as the chairman over citizenship, and he expressed to me the reason why, and this was during when the Constitutional Convention happened, and it was a chief that resided during that time. He expressed to me that this was done in order to keep some of the areas that held the tribal towns to where they would not be able to put money behind certain candidates that would actually begin to take over. So therefore, they opened up the voting to everyone, so that would never happen. But unfortunately, as you can tell now, and I think this has to be said, and going back to district voting, then all of a sudden now you get rid of the popular vote, and you have only the people in the district who will vote for the people that, they assume would be, a reasonable representative for them. And I think the A and B, I think, as far as I'm concerned, should still be in place, because that way, because you're not replacing the whole council at one time at each election, but you have those staggered, term limits. And so anyway, our terms. So that way there's always somebody there that has experience. But that was what I was told by one of the former chiefs, and as to why this happened. And the other portion was also, according to what I heard the representative speak in terms of Edwin Marshall stating, this wasn't really supposed to happen, but this was something that was slid in there, and all of a sudden it was changed, and it was kind of a sneaky kind of thing that took place that caused us to have the voting we have today. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Harjo. Any other questions, comments? Representative Randolph?
If I could, Madam Chair, if there's any of the other ladies that would like to speak on this issue, is there anybody up there?
Yes, I was the clerk in the Supreme Court at the time when this Constitution Convention was going on. And I know that Judge Moore was one of them that started the Constitution Convention, and they were having the meetings and stuff in our conference room and things. And And I know this particular issue, it got slipped in there somehow. And Robert Trapp filed a lawsuit, if y'all remember, that he had filed a lawsuit fighting this because it wasn't legal. And it was also signed by 3 of the justices. And in our Constitution, it says there's supposed to be 4. George Amarigi had passed away, so there was only 5 at the time. The 2 ladies, Leah Harjo-Ware and Denny Mauser. And the other 3 were John Chowdhury, Houston Shirley, and Amos McNack. Those 3 signed it. But Robert Trapp, like you said in that suit, it wasn't legal because it was supposed to be signed by 4. It should have been thrown out, but it never was. Nobody ever did anything about it. But yeah, he filed that right after all that was done. But he called it illegal. And the ladies agreed, Denny Mauser and Leah Harjo-Ware, because they voted against it, but they got outvoted.
Thank you, ma'am. Representative Hicks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for that statement. Rita, thank you for your comments. Thank everybody that has spoke on this. My concern is, go back to district voting, it still is the popularity vote. It's whoever has the biggest family when you go back to district voting. Now that it's opened up, I mean, I don't just serve citizens in Oak Fusky District. I serve them all over, and that's my job, and that's how I see it. I can see what Ms. Williams is saying. I see what everybody's saying, but I still feel like I support each and every Muskogee Creek citizen out there, whether they're in Oak Fusky, Tocobuchee, Tulsa, Arizona, California, it doesn't matter. If they call me and if I can help them, then I'm going to help them. And I feel like that's how everybody should. It shouldn't be limited to district only. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Now, I just want to make a comment to whether or not this passes, if it moves forward, and I am the representative of Tocobuchee District, regardless of where you're from, I'm still going to serve you, whether or not you voted for me in my district. I just wanted to say that. Any other comments? Representative
Yes,
Randolph?
Madam Chair.
Representative Randolph?
There was a few things, because I rolled this over in my mind also, a lot on the pros and the cons, and in the 11 years or something that I've been on council, I have my own opinion, but I wrote some things down, and I thought, if we were to go back to district voting, I think it would strengthen communication / correspondence and accessibility to build open relationships with National Council representatives and citizens residing in home districts. Each district is unique and needs strong representation to provide advocacy, economic development, and work closely with community boards to provide holistic needs, assessments, and look at our demographics of each community. National Council representatives empowered with the ability to focus on challenges as well as the strengths of their communities. For myself, because at first I agree with Mr. Hicks, I was against this before. I didn't want to go back to district voting because I thought the same thing. I thought it's going to be the largest family. Whoever has the most voters behind them, they're going to get in no matter what. But I was looking at it again, and since then things have changed. Each year it changes, and we're challenged in different ways. And I think that it would be a great benefit if we were able to really focus on our district, our home district. I also wrote, provide more accountability and transparency of National Council representatives with the districts they are elected to represent. Emulate the cultural practices of the tribal town / confederacy as intended in our Constitution. I think, with our communities, we're divided out in these areas, and, it is emulating and as stated in the Constitution, but we're not able to do that if we're at large, if we're pulled in all these directions. And to provide concrete National Council representation according to geographical area, individuals, family, community, and nation. I just wanted to say that much in support of going back to district voting. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or concerns from the committee? Representative Golden?
Yes, I support this, but at the same time, like I said, I want to see the numbers. And I would like to know that it's fair and equitable, not, especially to our citizens. But like what Mr. Randolph was saying, part of that is kind of up to us for our job descriptions, to have our, who we represent as our primary in our district. So, and then we go to other communities and we represent everybody. So I know that there are people, that live in Denver and Michigan and different places, and they need assistance just as well as anybody in Walika, Oklahoma. So, they need to feel like, because I used to live out there, I know that I was disconnected. And I wanted to know that somebody on this council was representing me as much as they were representing somebody that lived within the boundaries. So that's my personal feeling. Like I said, I just support this, but at the same time, there's some changes that we need to make, and we need to go back and look into some of those things on how this got changed, because we don't want this to happen again, because we're going to keep coming back to the table and we're going to be leaving people out.
Any more questions? And I just want to make a
Madam Chair.
I just want to make a quick statement. I had actually started reaching out to communities within my district when I would go to the community meetings and ask their opinion about district voting. And for the most part, the community members were in favor of going back to district voting, because we've all said it, we've all seen it, we've all been part of it, is that for me as a voter in Tocobuchee District, I didn't know who I was voting for in Tulsa District. And by the same token, Tulsa didn't know who we were either. And as Representative Randolph stated, all our communities had different needs. And so we identify with the needs because we are part of them. So Representative Harjo.
Yes, I agree with what you're saying, and I do support this piece of legislation, but I think maybe we need to sit down and talk with the election board to make sure we get a lot of the terminology right and things we need to be speaking about that is being discussed right now, because I too have heard from our citizens and they would like for us to go back to the way it was initially. I think it can be done in a good way, but I think when we look at this, in order to make it fair, I think this is where, again, we need more a work session, or even sitting down with the election board, or maybe just the sponsors themselves dealing with this particular piece of work. So that way, if we can get it done in plenty of time, and what the election board would consider plenty of time, and something that they could do to be able to deal with the issues that Ms. Barnett was speaking in terms of how, there were several ballots that would have to be changed and equipment that would have to be bought. Maybe there can be another thing that could be identified that could help them. I don't know. But the legislation, at any rate, when we look at it, if it's going to be an added cost, then we have to consider the added costs along with this. But again, as you said earlier, going back to this particular piece of legislation, I don't think that any national council member, would deny the fact that they belong to a particular district, because we even have it on our shirts that says, like for me, Nelson Harjo, representation for Okmulgee District. But at the same time, I think even if it went back to district voting, I know it wouldn't bother me if I got a call from Tulsa or wherever else. Well, then my concern is just still for our people. And I think that's something we will do anyway as national council members. But at the same time, it would also give us that opportunity to really concentrate in our areas, and, according to the demographics and whatever it is that we may need economically there. But again, I'm for this, but I think it needs to be talked out a little bit more before we even go into vote on this. So that way, the wording that needs to be in there can be put in there, and hopefully we can come back to the table and say, hey, this is a piece that we're looking for, and then vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Harjo. Ms. Barnett, are you still on?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a deadline that the council needs to meet in order for you all to do what you need to do to get it on the ballot.
And you're looking at putting it on the general election ballot in November, correct?
Yes, that's what the legislation says.
Because those ballots are printed in-house by the election board office, I'd like to ask I don't know if the manager is on the call today. I think he is. And he will have to tell you what the turnaround time in terms of the office personnel to be able to get that ballot printed.
Mr. Harjo, are you online?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here.
Did you hear? Go ahead.
Yes, I heard the question. It would be preferable to have the finalized language to put on the ballot for the general by October 1st. That way we have plenty of time to get those printed up and to get those prepared to mail out to the absentee voters.
You said October the 1st?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions from the representatives in attendance or online? Representative Hicks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's really not a question, but Mr. Harjo Jr.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way, whether this gets passed today or not, I'd like to see some numbers. Is there any way that you can get numbers for the last election? Because I know when we have chief and second chief elections, we only average about 4,000 or 5,000 voters. So I just wanted to see what it looked like with just National Council of Representatives running per district. So you're probably maybe looking, just guessing, 50, 300, 500, maybe? But I just wanted to see those numbers, and so everybody can see them, I guess. So anyway, I'd like to make that request.
Thank you, Representative Hicks. Last call for questions.
I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this until we get the numbers and until we get this seat A and seat B language, like the way that it should be legally, and maybe that constitution review to make sure that this amendment is not going to change and it's going to stick the way that it should be.
How long do you want to postpone for?
The next meeting?
Okay. We have a motion from Representative Golden to postpone until the next BF&J meeting.
Second.
We have a second from Representative Freeman. Any discussion on that? Roll call vote, please.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor and 0 against to postpone until the next BF&J meeting. Okay, NCA 23-060, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation authorizing the expenditure of the U.S. Department of Treasury Community Development Financial Institutions Fund Assistance Agreement Grant for the benefit of the Muskogee Loan Fund. Sponsor, Representative Mark Randolph.
Motion do pass.
We have a motion for due pass from Representative Randolph. We have a second from Representative Golden. Discussion?
Madam Chair, we have Mrs. Dixon here with us. If you have any questions, or Mr. Harjo, if you have any questions.
Does anybody have any questions regarding this legislation for Mr. Harjo? No? Any questions from the representatives online or in attendance? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Sandra Golden.
Yes.
Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. NCA 23-060 passes. NCA 23-061. A law of the Muskogee Creek Nation authorizing the expenditure of grant funds awarded from the U.S. Department of Interior Division of Economic Development, Office of Indian Economic Development, for the benefit of the Office of Marketing and Tourism. Sponsor, Representative Randall Hicks.
Madam Chair, a motion to postpone indefinitely.
We have a motion from Representative Hicks to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
We have a second from Representative Randolph. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Harjo, if you don't
Mr.
mind. Madam
Harjo?
Chair.
Thank you, Council. I would just like to apologize, but our office received 4 OIED awards, and I believe the confusion was that we submitted the wrong legislation to expend. We have legislation to expend for 3 of them, and what should have been sent over was legislation to expend for a tribal broadband grant. We received legislation to expend for 2 NABD awards to OIED and then another for tribal tourism, which this was sent over, I believe, last month, and we already received legislation to expend under NCA 2325, I believe, last month in May. So I think it was just a clerical error on our side. And if the committee is willing, I would love to propose a substitution in legislation so we can get that. Okay, just kidding. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harjo. Are there any questions for him?
No.
Any questions from the representatives online or in attendance? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Sandra Golden.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. NCA 23-061 is postponed indefinitely. At this time, I'd like to relinquish the chair to Vice Chair Sandra Golden.
So the legislation that we have before us is NCA 23-062, a law of Muskogee Creek Nation amending NCA Title 37, Chapter 3, entitled Employees, to amend the minimal hourly wage for employees of the Muskogee Creek Nation. Sponsor, Thomasine Yohola Osborne.
Chairman, I make a motion for due pass.
Have a motion from Thomasine Yohola Osborne, sponsor to adopt. Do pass. Second by Mr. Randolph. Osborne?
Thank you, Chair. I believe we have, I see Chief Beaver on the line. Chief Beaver?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Council, I appreciate this opportunity to talk about this legislation. And what this does, obviously, is raise our minimum wage to $15 an hour. I don't think it's been raised for 11 years, maybe 12 years. But what we did was last year, this fiscal year, FY23, we raised most of the salaries to at least $15 to see what it would do to the budget. And so during this budget cycle, we looked at all the salaries again, and there was very few. I think there was probably out of the 1,300 employees, I think there's like 15 that was not at $15 an hour. But out of those 15, 20 employees, I think 12 of them were at like $14.90. There was a couple like at $10 and $12, and so it seems like we can handle the increase in the budget, and so we just want to codify it, and so that's why you have the legislation in front of you.
Are there any questions for Second Chief Beaver? Any questions for representatives online?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have a question. This is Representative Harjo.
Okay, Representative Harjo, go ahead.
Second Chief, looking at this and raising the minimum wage now, let's say we already have a person who's sitting at $15 an hour. Mm-hmm. And now, does that raise their wage up, or do they just stay there? Or for those who maybe got a raise and their raise was put up to $15 an hour, and then now all of a sudden that's not a raise anymore, that's just minimum wage. So right. How do we deal with that, and do we deal with that?
Last year we dealt with kind of when we raised all the wages up to $15 an hour. we dealt with that ripple effect of increasing other people's wages. And so what we did this year was, if you already were in FY23 budget and you're at 15 bucks an hour, then we created a line item for 4% raises. And so, so if you were, according to your, evaluation, if you deserve a raise, then you'll get a raise. So it's not automatic. It's going to depend on employee evaluation and your performance.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions? Ms. Osborne?
Second Chief, I just have a quick question. Are we up to date on our employee evaluations?
I think the majority have done the evaluations. We require 2 evaluations a year, at least 2 evaluations a year. And so usually it's at the beginning of the fiscal year and the middle of the fiscal year. So we should have had all of them turned in by now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any more questions by anybody? You have one, Mr. Hicks?
Thank you. Chief, Second Chief. So who is going to change, or are they going to change the pay scales? Because if they're making 13, 14, and that's max, all these pay scales have to be changed to the minimum 15 to whatever you decide the max is going to be.
Right. We won't really have to change the pay scale per se. They'll stick within the same, I guess, pay scale. But if they move out of the pay scale, then they just bump up. So, anything below $15 an hour, well, it's just a piece of paper to go by, really, right? And
Right.
so they'll still have their steps, and they'll still have the way they can bump up. So the pay scale really doesn't change because it still stays the same as far as how many bumps they can go up to before they get to the next step.
Okay. I mean, I'm in support of this. It's always been an issue that has been raised is you had long-term employees that's been here making
Right.
10, 11 bucks and finally get up to 15, and now you get somebody new that's coming in at 15 bucks an hour. I just feel like, or I wish there was a way to compensate everybody, but maybe down the road we can do that. But anyway, thank you, sir.
Yeah, and we addressed, we tried to address most of that during this fiscal year, and so we wouldn't have that big hit. And so if we see that going on in FY24, then we have the ability to make it right, per se.
At all? Any other questions? No other questions, call for a vote.
Thomasina Hall Osborne,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Yes. Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
That motion passes. That passed. I'll turn the seat back over to Thomasina Hall Osborne, who's the chairperson.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. Next item on the agenda is referred legislation, and we have none. Following that is other business.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to add NCR 23-001, NCR 23-002, and TR 23-065 to the agenda.
We have a motion from Representative Randolph to add NCR 23-001, NCR 23-002, and TR 23-065. Do I have a second? We have a second from Representative Randolph. Golden. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote to add these to the agenda.
Mark Randolph.
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Sandra Golden.
Yes.
Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. These items have been approved to add to the agenda. NCR 23-001, a resolution of the Muskogee Creek National Council selecting Jeremy Larney to serve on the Muskogee Nation Businesses LLC, MNB LLC Board of Directors. Sponsor is Representative William Lowe.
Chairwoman, motion for due pass.
We have a motion for due pass from Representative Golden. Do I have a second? We have a second from Representative Hicks. Discussion? Representative Golden?
I believe Mr. Larney is here.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon, Mr. Larney. What we normally do with the committee is that we go ahead and vote on moving you forward to the pre-agenda, and that is slated for June the 17th at 9 a.m. What we like to do is give the full council an opportunity to ask any questions they may have of you. Roll call vote, please.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. NCR 23-001 passes. Thank you, Mr. Larney. NCR 23-002, a resolution of the Muskogee Creek National Council observing July the 9th, 2023 as Muskogee Creek Nation Sovereignty Day. Sponsor, Representative William Lowe.
Motion for due pass.
We have a motion for due pass from Representative Golden. We have a second from Representative Randolph. Discussion? Representative Golden?
Speaker Lowe, would you like to speak on this?
Thank you, committee, for your consideration for this legislation. At this time, I would like to ask Mr. Richard Anderson to come and tell you about his great idea for this event, please.
Jay and committee members, appreciate the time to speak to the resolution on the agenda. If you bear with me for a second, just wanted to make a few remarks about NCRs for our students that might be listening and our citizens for sure. And again, bear with me, I know this is old news for you, but where National Council acts and tribal resolutions originate in the executive branch side and come across generally for council review, a National Council resolution gets drafted, reviewed, and possibly approved totally by the National Council. Generally, NCRs are kind of routine. This body uses them to confirm and approve seating a citizen on a board of an independent agency generally. So they can be kind of routine, but on occasion, an NCR is used by the National Council to declare a position on an issue or respond to a situation on a reservation in the United States or even in the world. As this body continues building relationships with other tribal legislatures, and city councils, and as you kind of grow the authority and position of this body, the National Council resolution and maybe joint resolutions may become a legislative tool that you will use in partnering with other cities on reservations and cities councils in the state. Again, an NCR can be a pretty momentous occasion to declare something. Last year, NCR 22-006 was used by this body to declare support for the sovereignty of the people of Ukraine. And that kind of thing doesn't come along very often, but this is something that is available. NCR 23-002 is a proposed resolution that basically supports the Tribal Sovereignty Day. This year, Sovereignty Day, the actual date falls on a Sunday, July 9th, but the tribal holiday is the next day on Monday the 10th. And so in the body of the resolution that you're looking at, you see basically in the whereas sections kind of a summary of the history of this tribal legislature going back to possibly legislators in your family, way back to post-Civil War days that might have been in the National Council office way back when, mentions a historic role of your legislative responsibilities. It also talks about how this body has reaffirmed recent efforts to litigate and support tribal sovereignty and the result of that in this Supreme Court decision was so momentous and so historic for our people. So in the close of the resolution, it's fairly simple. Just basically encourages our people to maybe sponsor their own observance events, recognize this, let's promote it, let's make it something our children know and recognize as a national, meaning Creek Nation, tribal holiday, and encourage them to sponsor their own events, and finally, decrease our and your support for continuing the fight for sovereignty. So it's kind of a first event we may be looking to put together if this body sees fit to support it. It goes forward. I know that's going to be a busy week. I think intertribal's the same week. So if this body kind of indicates it's open to proceeding with this, then as staff and myself will begin trying to make this come to fruition on July the 10th with a National Council observance of some sort. And so we're working on a lot of ideas and kind of waiting for a response to see if we should devote more time to this, but we'd be glad to answer any questions. But pretty straightforward, establishing a National Council observance of a historic day. So,
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Are there any questions for Mr. Anderson? Any questions from the representatives online or in attendance? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. NCR 23-002 is approved. PR 23-065, a tribal resolution of the Muskogee Creek Nation respectfully urging the Oklahoma State Legislature to override the vetoes of Oklahoma House Bill 1005 and Senate Bill 26. Sponsor is Representative Mark Randolph.
Motion do pass.
We have a motion for due pass from Representative Randolph.
Second.
We have a second from Representative Hicks. Discussion, Representative Randolph.
No discussion unless anyone has input.
Does anybody have any input or any questions regarding this bill? Representatives online or in attendance? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Yes. Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Randall Hicks.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. TR 23-065 passes. Next item on the agenda, we have MNGE. Welcome, Mr. Ray. We haven't seen you in a while.
But you've heard from me.
Yeah, but I've heard you.
Madam Chair, I make a motion go into executive session for his report.
We have a motion from Representative Hicks to go into executive session for MNGE's report. Do I have a second? We have a second from Representative Freeman. Discussion?
I believe just National Council present online.
Representative Hicks, roll call
Oh,
vote, please.
I'm sorry. Always do that.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman. Sandra Golden.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you got 4 in favor and 0 against.
We have 4 in favor, 0 against. We are in executive. Next item on the agenda is announcements. Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Last night at the MNGE meeting, Eufaula Casino, they had requested a Employee Appreciation Day. It was approved. I believe the date was 6/28, and the general manager, Derek Fife, had asked me to invite the committee to come out and just be a part of that appreciation. 6/28. I have 6/28 now, but I will confirm that, and then I will email everybody.
And the time?
I'll get the time. I think it was 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. The casino's going to stay open in operation, but they're still gonna have the appreciation, so. And secondly, Duck Creek is also having an employee appreciation day. Theirs is scheduled 8/20/23.
Whose is that?
Duck Creek
Duck
Casino.
Creek.
Theirs is 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And General Manager Lorinda Driscoll had invited the board or the committee out as
Committee,
well.
okay.
So just to be a part and show the staff that we are here for them, so.
We exist.
Yeah, yes, both casinos will remain open. So it'll be just come and go for the employees that are working.
Okay, committee, we've got a couple of invites there. Any
Thank
other
you.
announcements? Representative Golden?
We had our all-sports camp at Eufaula this morning, today, and we had 50 kids. Last week, we had 51 at Okema, and before that, at Haskell, we had 86. Tomorrow is Glenpool, and they have no shade there, so if you come, bring a tent. We also have 5 more that Thursday, next Thursday, the 15th is Bristow, the 16th is Okmulgee, next Friday, and Waleek is the 22nd, and the 30th is Kellyville.
Thank you, Representative Golden. Representative Freeman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is just for general discussion, just want to make you aware. I think we've, part of my little kind of efforts here lately is about our new business kind of ventures and our new business models. I just wanted to just make sure that I included the committee when I'm talking about trying to make an arrangements. I am in contact with the Dan Bourne's office, you know, the Chickasaw Nation Secretary of Commerce. So if it's okay with the committee, I'll arrange some kind of a meeting for us to either all meet together. And these are all informal, just nothing that's going to be real strategic. I mean, it's just an informational learning session, you know. So if we ever get this thing set up, and we can all visit with the Chickasaw Nation to look and see how they conduct their business model and how it relates to all their tribal functions. So just wanted to make sure that I included the committee when I.
Thank you, Representative Freeman. Any other announcements? Any announcements from the representatives online or in attendance? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a motion from Representative Hicks to adjourn. Do I have a second? A second from Representative Golden. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Representative Hicks, if you'll provide the benediction, that'll serve as our adjournment. Thank you, Representative Hicks. We are adjourned at 4:17.